And I think what you're going to see increasingly is, look, federal government is basically inept. And everything it does, it fails at. Mm-hmm. You're seeing mayors now starting to take control of their communities and say, the hell with the rest of them. We're going to make this work here, but that means you're going to have to make choices. You're going to have to really define who you are, where you want to compete, because you can't be everything to everybody.
Right.
We have this huge engine to the north of us right now. Hopefully there's an asset bubble that's not forming that's going to break, but it's an economy that's growing rapidly in large part because it's got a huge amount of human resources there, very well-trained, very sophisticated, and a lot of money. So we are literally 50 minutes south of downtown Boston. We need to figure out better ways to draw connections to Boston, to Rhode Island.
Because I mean, ultimately, we keep talking in terms of the Rhode Island economy, the Providence economy. We need to break that down and start thinking about the central New England economy.
Absolutely.
Well, we need to decentralize. As with so many things, we need to decentralize in this country. Energy production, food production, like we need to decentralize our
healthcare.
idea of economy.
I agree. I'm a big advocate of decentralization. I'm a big advocate of building resiliency into systems, and I believe that happens at the local level. I don't know if either one of you read Aaron Rinn's little article last year that really ripped Rhode Island apart. It offended some people, but Aaron was right. The fact of the matter is that Rhode Island's still living on a legacy that's been gone for decades.
Mm-hmm.
We are not relevant. We have no leverage right now. How can we?
And the textiles aren't coming back.
They're not coming back.
Jewelry isn't coming back.
And so how do you refuel that? And some people feel, well, we need to create more housing to attract the young, the bright. There's some who say, no, you need to create jobs, because unless you create jobs, you aren't going to bring in the population. I think it's both. But
and I think that creates kind of the chicken
strategy.
and egg scenario where how do you get one without the other?
Yeah, you really have to do them both simultaneously, but you really have to tear down that state border, and you need to stop thinking parochial. You need to stop thinking as if you're unique in some way.
I'm glad you used that word parochial, because this is something I think we as Rhode Islanders suffer from on such a micro level, to the point where people don't say they're from Burrillville, they're from Pasco.
Oh, yeah.
They're
I'm from Forestdale, not
right, you're
Smithfield.
you're from Forestdale, right?
I'm from Arnold Mills.
Oh, I can't afford to live in Arnold's Mills.
He lives on the wrong side of the lake.
Neither can I.
But how much do you think that I mean, that's more of a social science question, a sociological question, I suppose. But how much do you think that parochialism plays into kind of the infighting over like pulling businesses into smaller communities?
I think it's a huge element of it. And I can say this because I'm not from Rhode Island. I'm from the Midwest, but I think that there's an incredible level of arrogance in this state that just blows me away, because it's unfounded arrogance. We really need to start thinking much differently, and we have to think bigger, and we have to think long term. Mm-hmm. And we're thinking short term and small.
Well, when you look at I live literally about 150 yards from the Massachusetts border. And so how is it possible? Because ultimately Rhode Island political leaders are very defensive about the issues surrounding a quote-unquote small state because of the challenges we face because of our urban core. Yet how is it possible that a state, a town, a municipality 150 yards away can have lower taxes, better schools, lower cost of energy, lower unemployment, more opportunity, when that same state also encompasses areas like one of your old stomping grounds, Chicopee? It encompasses Fall River, New Bedford. And yet, one of the conversations that we have on an ongoing basis on the coalition is the minimum wage. Interestingly enough, you'll never hear any debate, even from the most hardened leftists in Massachusetts, about the minimum wage. Because the real minimum wage, that is the wage necessary to actually get someone to show up to work for you, is 20 to 30% higher than the state-mandated minimum wage. Yeah. At this point, one could argue that the $15 minimum wage actually exists in this part of the country, in the Boston area, because the job market is so overheated. You aren't going to get a warm body to show up if you're not paying $15 an hour.
That's correct.
And yet you don't have to have those conversations there because of the economy. You have to have it here because it would have to be artificially levied.
I saw it when I moved to Boston, back in I'm gonna date myself here. 15 years ago, back in 2000, I moved up there with my girlfriend, who she turned out to be crazy, by the way. And noticed that, for the same jobs I was applying for in the restaurant business, saute chef, line cook jobs, $5-6 more an hour than what people were willing to pay me in the Providence area. The same job in Providence was going to pay me $9.50, $10 an hour. I could take a train an hour north and make $15-16 an hour for the same job.
Well, every day I join the tired, the poor, the huddled masses, and journey forth on my tired steed from Rhode Island to do the work that people from Massachusetts won't do. So I can, I work in Watertown, so I can appreciate that.
Are you a Massachusetts alien that has taken some Massachusetts job?
Absolutely. Talk about you talk about racism. It's called driving while a Rhode Islander. Let's almost go down a checklist then. If tomorrow Gina Raimondo had a deathbed conversion to small government and potential success and appointed you as head of some sort of quasi-governmental agency, let's go down a checklist.
Broad-ranging powers. We're giving you broad-ranging powers.
Yeah, just to kind of clear the deck.
Benevolent dictatorship?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Number one, the level of bonding that takes place to promote the economic activity as steered by the state. What are your thoughts on that?
I think bonding's appropriate when it's investing in fundamental pillars of our economy that are necessary, like roads. I think it's critical.
All right. So should bonding ever be used to support payroll, to support R&D, to support
general budget gaps?
General budget or cash flow items?
Well, if I start going and putting a draw on my credit card to pay my operating costs, that's not a really good idea. So I don't think the state should be doing it either.
Okay. What then should the state? I mean, if you were able to, and again, I've used this example a couple times in the show. So briefly, I worked in Utah for a while. I worked here, but I worked for a Utah-based company where the Economic Development Commission played a very, very different role in business formation. They provided legal expertise. They provided help in the legality surrounding fundraising, issues like that, site analysis, site availability, resource availability. That was the function of a much more successful EDC out of Utah. What should be the role then of the quote unquote Commerce Corp?
My question should it even exist?
You know what? I don't. That's a hard question to answer. I will tell you that the most successful economic development organizations in this country are private funded, or at least over a majority of the money is coming from the private sector, and the private sector is sitting on the boards, and the private sector is driving the bus. We have an economic development system in Rhode Island that's totally public funded, and when you're public funded, you're by nature politicized. It hasn't worked. It has not worked. I'm gonna give the benefit of the doubt. I think this governor is hell bent on trying to start something here, but I really believe that unless it's the right things, we're simply buying time because it's crumbling right now, and I don't see the kinds of conversations that have to occur to reposition Rhode Island over the long term to be economically relevant.
So were you in the room for the big pre-inaugural economic summit that Gina Raimondo had?
No, I've been at so many of those. And that's not a criticism.
Why am I'm picturing somebody going, I've had it up to here with the likes of you people.
It's the same conversation, and it's typically the same people, and nothing happens.
Yeah.
We've only got a minute left, so first of all, I want to reintroduce our guest, and hopefully this podcast will be up shortly. Scott Gibbs is the president of the Economic Development Foundation of Rhode Island, one of the most successful business innovators, business incubators, business development and change agents here in recent Rhode Island history, running projects literally across the state from Westerly to Newport, hopefully. We'd like to have you on again because there's a whole conversation we want to have about the future of Newport. We're intimately involved in the anti-casino expansion, people. Thank you again for coming in. We are the coalition. We are issues.
Can I just chime in before we close here real quick? I want to tell everybody, follow Scott on Twitter. It's at Scott A. Gibbs. And some of the best think pieces that come through my Twitter feed come from Scott. So
Great stuff. We are the Coalition on AM 790, coalitionradio.us, facebook.com/the Coalition Radio, on the Mighty Mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio. Dave, who's going to be with us next week?
Next week is a big show. We have Phil Isle, former news editor for the Providence Phoenix, and Bill Rapley from Channel 10 is going to be here talking about all things media.
All things media. Folks, thanks for tuning in. Have a great week.